Hello fellow rail fans, today we're going to look at converting power routing turnouts into isolated frog turnouts, which are friendlier for digital command control. Isolated frog turnouts have constant power to all points on the turnout, except for the frog, which is isolated of course, which means that you don't have dead spots and you don't have shorts, both of which can be serious problems for digital command control. Power routing turnouts derive the polarity of the frog points from the blade points, and this can be problematic because if the blades are not aligned properly, you have dead zones, and if you have the locomotive run afoul of the turnout, you can have a short. This project takes about an hour, but it saves you $30 for not having to replace the turnout. For this project, you'll need an electric multimeter with short buzzer, a rotary cutting tool with the thinnest blade you can find, and a sanding attachment, a razor saw and a file, a couple pair of pliers and a tweezer, a flush cutting set of rail nippers, a wire cutting and stripper tool, and 30 gauge wire, super glue and sheet styrene, a variable heat solder iron with lead-based solder, silver-based solder, and electronics grade flux, code appropriate rail joiners and PC board ties. Operate your equipment safely and wear your safety goggles. Get started by turning your soldering iron to its hottest setting. Once it reaches temperature, you'll want to desolder the joiners between the blade rails. Use your pliers both to grip the rails because the hot solder iron will get hot, and as a heat sink because you don't want to melt the ties in this process. Use a little patience and desolder all four corners. Set the blade rails aside once you're done. And there you go. Once you get this step done, you'll want to flip the turnout over so it's rail sides down. You want to cut out the area around the top joiner from your swing rails. Now to do this, go ahead and cut all the way through the plastic to the rails for the tie with the joiner on it and the one that it's attached to on the top. You'll see the you'll know where the joiner is because that section of the plastic connection is a little bit thicker. Go ahead and cut through thoroughly, and then we'll want to peel the thing off. You only want to peel this section off. So, once you have that taken off, you can begin desoldering the rail joiner from the swing rail proper. You'll want to clean up the solder from it using your solder iron because you'll actually be attaching the swing blades back to the rails using your rail joiners as a hinge. Once this step is complete, you can go ahead and flip your rails right side up and then take your Dremel tool and make a cut on either side of the frog. Now make sure you're cutting where the rails are not directly joined together because you're wanting to actually isolate the frog with this cut. Once your cut is completed, fill the gaps with super glue. You'll want to go ahead and take those little plastic pieces of sheet styrene and put them into the gaps. The super glue should coat them either side so they will hold. Those will actually be your isolators for your frog. Once you get your isolators in there, go ahead and take your pliers and push the rails together. Eliminate the gap, and so you'll just have your little piece of plastic sandwiched between the rails. Set that aside so that the super glue can dry, and then you take your rail joiners and you push them onto the end of your swing blades. Now this is a process that takes some level of patience, but you should get them on about 90% of the way on. You should just have enough of an end of your rail joiner sticking out so that they just barely hook onto the rest of the turnout. These will be your hinges after all, so you don't want too stiff of a hold. Once that's accomplished, you can go ahead and wrestle your blades back onto the swing part of your turnout and get them in there. Once you have them on, do test them for movability. You want them to be able to be fairly flexible on the ends so that they will go back and forth. This is a turnout after all. Once you get that done, go ahead and take your PC board tie and place it between the rails. Apply some flux and use your silver-based solder to get it on there. Now you want to use your silver-based solder because that actually has a stronger hold than your lead solder. And because this is a stress point, you want to move the rails with this tie, with this crossbar. You actually want to have a very firm connection. Once you're all soldered in, go ahead and test to make sure that your swing blades are still moving. Next, you want to go ahead and take the PC board ties and fill in those ties that you just cut out at the top of your swing blades. Go ahead and solder them in, using your silver solder again, on the outside of the rails this time. Remember, you don't want any derailments, and you don't want to solder your swing rails into place. You want them to move freely. Test for movement once you've got the joint soldered in, and we're good to go. Then do the same for the second tie. Solder in, and you're good to go. Now you want to go ahead, once you get all these ties soldered in, and cut them for appropriate length so that they're not really sticking out on your turnout. Once your ties are all situated, you want to go ahead and take your Dremel tool, this time with the sanding bit, and sand off the copper between the rails. Remember, the copper conducts electricity, and you don't want it to be a short. Next, take your electric multimeter and test the rail for conductivity. Make sure that there are no shorts where you don't want them. By this point, your super glue should be pretty good and dry, so go ahead and cut away the excess styrene from the joints at the top of your turnout. Make sure that you only have the rails exposed. Remember, wheels need to roll over these. You may find it helpful to test your turnout with a set of trucks that you have lying around. And here it goes one way. Flip the switch. And it goes the other way. No problem. Looks like we're set. It's a good working turnout. Next, you want to flip it over again and go ahead and cut the tie connectors just beyond the frog point, toward the frog end of the turnout. You want to cut all four through and clean it up. Then you want to apply some flux and then solder to it. Now the next step, you're going to take your 30 gauge wire and actually solder it into place so that your frog rails are fully powered. Now you want to go and make sure you do left to left and right to right. You'll actually have them crossing in the middle. If you get it right, it'll look like this. Once you have your wires all soldered into joint, give it another check with the multimeter. Make sure everything is working the way you want it to work. Everything passes muster, go ahead and drill a hole in the crossbar of your swing rails. This will help you install a turnout motor. And once you have that drilled, you're done. Now if you want to get fancy, you can of course paint your ties black, but I don't need to do a tutorial on that. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.